Call this April 8th, 2019 Board of Selectmen meeting to order. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, the first item we have is the approval of the minutes of the March 25th, 2019 regular meeting.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that we approve the minutes of March 25th, 2019 regular meeting.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Okay. It's past the hour of 7 p.m. We have a public hearing to consider plan number 27613686 from Massachusetts Electric Company and Verizon New England for a pole relocation at 187 East Main Street. Do we have a representative from Verizon here? Okay. It was pretty self-explanatory, but I don't know if anybody wants more explanation than that. It's a new lot that is being developed, and the pole that exists right now is currently in the middle of where the driveway is going. So, do we have any discussion? It's a public hearing. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to speak? Okay. Kim's going to check.
Kim's just checking to see if perhaps we're downstairs at the wrong conference room.
Been known to happen. So,
The town engineer is here as well, in case you have
Fred,
any
would you like to
questions.
say anything?
You said it all. It's pretty straightforward. There's a driveway being proposed, and the way the developer laid out the driveway, the pole falls right in the middle of it. They're just moving it over for safety of the access to the new house.
That's fine, Kim. I think the board's comfortable with it. I mean, unless there's somebody that's not comfortable, then we'll postpone this. Members of the public, we didn't have any public. So, do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move the board vote to approve Plan Number 276-13686 as submitted by Massachusetts Electric Company, National Grid, and Verizon New England for a pole relocation at 187 East Main Street.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Okay. It's past the hour of 7:05 p.m. Kerry Ward, Tugas Family Farm, to consider an application for a special one-day license as submitted by Kerry Ward and Andre Tugas for a spring festival event to be held at Tugas's Farm on premises located at 234 Ball Street. Do we have a representative here? Okay, if you want to come on up.
Yes.
So you're Kerry.
Yes,
Okay, if you just want to tell us a little bit about what you plan to do.
sure. We are hoping to do a spring festival on Saturday, running 10 to 4, mostly highlighting the apple blossom. Fingers crossed the timing works out. So doing wagon rides around the orchard, having a couple of food trucks, proposing a one-day liquor license to work with Cold Harbor Brewery in Westboro. And we're working with Central Mass Grown to also put on like a little mini farmer's market, and then we'll have music by John Short. So sort of a one-day festival there at Tugas. And then in regards to the food truck, I'll just say this now before I forget. I did talk to the dog father because he still has to get approved from the fire. He just said right now his trucks have been working every day, so he's having a hard time finding. So I just told him to call and maybe just work out a time to stop by.
All he's got to do is give us a call, we'll work it out.
Okay.
Questions from the board? Leslie?
So I assume that the bracelets for 21 and over would be handed out when they buy the 2 drink tickets?
Yes, so the way in my mind I was visioning it was right as people enter, like before they get in the line to purchase the alcohol, there'll be somebody there carding,
Okay.
braceleting people. And it is a free event, so we're not doing wristbands for anything else, so it will just be a one wristband for people getting alcohol. Purchasing the beverages at one spot and then kind of going down the line and turning in the tickets. And Cold Harbor staff, they're all tip certified there. And then I have my staff that are just going to help monitor the area, particularly like the entry points there.
Okay, so they're not taking alcohol beyond the...
Yeah, it's going to be fenced in, not the whole farm. But we have, last year was one of our best purchases, were like those like parade barriers, those metal barriers, because you could just move 12 at a time with a tractor. So we can just set those up really easy, in, creating the openings with the fences there.
Okay, that's very good, thank you.
Yep.
Now, your staff will be carding, or the Cold Harbor people will be carding?
It'll be the Cold Harbor staff, but I have, a lot of my like adult staff will just be helping keep an eye out, just since it is our first time, making sure people don't, go out into the parking lot with alcohol, and keeping it into that area that we are restricting them to or limiting to with the drinks.
Okay, any other questions? Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to approve the application for a one-day special liquor license as submitted by Kerry Ward and Andre Tugas of Tugas Family Farm for an event to be held on the grounds of the farm at 234 Ball Street on May 11, 2019, between 10 a.m. to 4 p.m., with a rain date of May 12, 2019, between 10 a.m. and 4 p.m., with the following conditions. 1, the license shall include the 24-hour period immediately before and after the event in order to allow for the proper delivery and disposal of all alcoholic beverages prior to and immediately following the event. 2, guests shall have identification on their person. Those who are 21 years or older will be given wristbands. 3, proper signage and barriers notifying guests that alcohol must be contained in the farmers market and music and picnic area only. No alcohol is allowed in the playground, barnyard farm store, in the orchard, or on wagon rides. 4, a permit from the fire department is required for any use of LP gas appliances. And 5, a permit from the building department is required in the event that a tent will be needed.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion?
I'm
Yeah.
exhausted, so.
Hearing none. All those in favor? Good luck.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Have
Thank you
fun.
very much.
Okay, it's past the hour of 7:08 PM. Sultan Salahuddin, Sammy's Restaurant. To consider an application as submitted by Sultan Salahuddin of Sammy's Restaurant for a common victual license for premises located at 14 East Main Street. Now, my understanding is this will be a common victual license for the outside area at Sammy's,
Yes.
Yes,
and there will be no inside tables,
there's no inside.
okay? Do you want to tell us anything else about this, or?
It's basically a restaurant outdoor that will be serving fried chicken, ice cream, effective tomorrow. Trombetta closed, we wanted to make sure that it was a place in the center of Northborough that would serve ice cream to families in town. There'll be seafood, just like it was in the past with Beeze's and the Dairy Hut. So there won't be much change at all. There'll be outdoor picnic tables on the property for people to sit down and enjoy.
Questions from the board? Leslie?
So the fence remains around the tables?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, because I think that's a great idea. It demarcates that, I think, very well as far as the traffic on Route 20, and it looks nice, so I'm glad that that's remained, so, place looks nice.
We've been eating there almost every weekend lately. My son loves it. So it's all good. Anybody, any other questions? Okay, do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to approve the application for a common particular license as submitted by Sultan Salahuddin of Sammy's Restaurant located at 14 East Main Street for the outside picnic tables only.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, it's past the hour of 7:10 PM. Kathy Jubert, Town Planner. Approval and execution of conservation restriction for a parcel known as Hayes G off of Bartlett Street. Hello.
This is similar to, if anyone remembers, I was here in December with a conservation restriction owned by the same company. It's all Gutierrez property out on Bartlett Street. This is contiguous property. It's all part of the same project as far as habitat protection for the blue spotted salamander. So just briefly, I'll, just cover the highlights that I did in the memo to all of you. You do, I believe, have tonight a map. I neglected to put that in your packet last Friday, but I believe that you have a map tonight. Correct or no?
Yes.
We can quickly make them
Yes.
if it didn't get in there.
I think we might have done the second one up there. Was it in the
Yeah,
back
so
there?
I emailed it, yeah. I
Oh, okay.
emailed you 3 documents
Yeah.
today.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So this is the map?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
So just to give you, obviously the map is just for the purpose of giving you your bearings out there on Bartlett Street. But if you're heading east on Bartlett Street, coming off of 20, you go past the high school, past all the residential development, and then what you see already constructed is the warehouse at 301 Bartlett Street. And that is what I was here for in December. Kind of round the corner and head into Marlborough. You have to enter this parcel through Marlborough. It has a Marlborough address, which is, a little bizarre, but the, front of the property is located in Northborough, and it's been permitted for a warehouse similar to what you see at 301 Bartlett Street. It's slightly smaller. It's about 167,000 square feet of warehouse space. So part of the, the whole development of that area involves an environmental review by the state, and so part of that mitigation is the protection of this habitat. So there's 3 parcels that all are part of this conservation restriction that the Conservation Commission here in Northborough will hold. And they'll actually be signing the paperwork tonight, assuming you sign the paperwork tonight, because it needs signatures from both boards. So there's 3 parcels, it totals a little under 10 acres as far as what the restriction is.
Questions from the board? Hearing none. Nope.
Yeah, is this primarily the spotted blue salamander
Yes,
issue?
yep.
Right.
Yep,
Is that it, pretty much?
yeah, yes.
Same
that-
as Algonquin, the issue we
Yes.
had talked about before?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to approve and execute the conservation restrictions for a parcel of land known as 0 Bartlett Street, map 51, parcel 3, as submitted by town planner Kathy Jubert and reviewed by town council.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kath.
Yeah.
Okay. Past the hour, 7:15 PM. And I'm going to kill this name, I know, I'm sorry. Shavia Tenakella and Jean Cahill. Presentation on plastic bag and polystyrofoam reduction warrant articles. Come on up. Yep. Or
Robbie is not here, and part of the reason that people have gotten involved in this is we realize that for a team to lead this effort is a bit Herculean, and sometimes they need backup of the rest of the community. So we're here to be the village that's going to help the kids do what they'd like to do. And Schwabe had come before town meeting last year with an initiative with a proposed bylaw to eliminate use of thin plastic shopping bags in town, and it was passed over at town meeting. Part of what I understand was that the terminology was inappropriate in the language of the bylaw, and it was also in the state legislature thought that the state may approve this anyway, so we passed it over. Knowing that it needed more work, I helped get the language fixed with the town. I worked with Casey Mellon, the health agent, and with Fred Litchfield, and we had a great process of getting the language so that it would comport fully with the town bylaw structure. So it's ready to be put right into effect as a solid waste and recycling bylaw. And so without Shravya here tonight, I will present the slides, and I'm expecting that she will be at town meeting to do this. Any other information I just wanted you to know about was that the language of the proposed bylaw comes from similar bylaws that have been approved in surrounding towns, and that we are working with high schoolers, we're consulting with town businesses, and we really want this to be a win-win for the town and to be as successful and as simple to implement as possible. We have had a few community outreach events. One was this past Saturday at the public library. We showed a documentary called Bag It about the harm of plastics in the environment and for human health. The high schoolers did an amazing job of demonstrating recycling do's and don'ts for the community, and as we all know, recycling is a big problem right now. We need to get our recycling stream cleaned up. We need community education around that, and to see the kids involved is just, it's really great. So I'll go through the slides that would be presented at town meeting, and I'd really appreciate the board's feedback as to what would be appropriate or where we can really shave some time off and make this presentation as best as possible. So I will start. I'm sorry. On the first slide, you saw the language of the bylaw. This is the simplified version, but it would eliminate thin plastic carry-out shopping bags, and would require that they be of compostable content, something like paper or a biodegradable in the marine environment type of plastic. If they're under a certain thickness, the 4 mils means it would be a very substantial bag and a reusable bag if it were to be distributed by a store. The second is that food service facilities in the town will not distribute polystyrene foam, and that is just a separate issue than was introduced at last year's town meeting, but one that we have seen go into effect in other towns, including in Shrewsbury. And these would become effective January 2020, and that they are ready to, as I said, to be implemented by our Board of Health. Oh, thank you. That's so much more convenient. And that they're ready to be implemented, as they are. And we've, as I said, we had very good feedback from our agent, our health agent, who will implement that by law, saying this is the way it would work best in our town. So we really appreciate the involvement of the town officials in helping us craft this. So our second slide shows the impacts in the environment. We're doing this because plastic is such an issue especially in aquatic environments, and just cited a few statistics here. But what we do see happening is that plastics are very mobile, very readily blown and carried by water into storm drains, into rivers that empty into oceans. And the oceans are now so burdened with plastic that I'm sure we all know the stories and the effects that it's having. But it's particularly the entangling, strangling, and the fact that it interferes with the digestive systems and actually starves animals, big and small. We have very small plastics in the environment. We don't really know what effect they're having yet. That's a subject of very active research. But we do have this accumulation, and it's our reason for wanting to see this happen town by town, if that's the way we need to do it. On our next slide, we show the effects on the recycling stream and the fact that plastic bags in particular are a huge problem for our recycling facilities. They entangle in the sorting equipment. As shown here, they wrap around the rollers and need to be manually cut out, which is part of the reason why our recycling is no longer marketable. And it's going to cost us more to continue to recycle. We have an excellent system, we have a really good collection program, and we just need to get it right so that the markets that are no longer accepting the materials will reopen. And the shopping bags can be recycled, but only 1 to 10%, depending on where you see what figure you have, are actually getting recycled. We see the win-win of this as one that will actually benefit small businesses in town. They're very concerned. We've talked with them. They're concerned about what it could mean that they have to pay more for giving out bags or for replacing styrofoam. But what we have seen in other towns around us and what we've heard from other merchants is that once it goes into effect in those towns, it's actually very seamless. People really get on board with bringing their own bags, and they're much stronger. They're much more, once you're in the habit, it becomes a habit that is actually saves money for the merchants, and it also prevents those materials from going into the waste stream. We have really good alternatives out there in the form of paper products. The benefits of which are that when they end up as litter on our roadways, when they end up in water bodies, they degrade. They don't, they're not there for the long term. Plastics can last for, we really don't know how long, but hundreds of years. And just break down into smaller and smaller fragments, which are potentially hazardous unto themselves. And then just want to emphasize that this is something that we think would benefit Northborough in many ways. Litter alone, effects on wildlife, and that we would be able to actually save resources and prevent waste and improve our recycling stream. 94 other towns in Massachusetts and cities in Massachusetts have banned single-use plastics, and so we're asking for the town to vote yes for these 2 articles. And my last slide, I believe, is on this. Yes, so these are the towns that have passed a a shopping bag ban, and Shrewsbury has also banned polystyrene foam food containers. So I'd be happy to answer your questions or to take your advice on how to proceed with town meeting and the presentation of these articles.
I think it was a good presentation. Questions and suggestions from the board? Leslie?
I like your presentation. Thank you for being here. And I think this is a huge issue, and I can't tell you how much I support this.
Thank you.
And I think there was a wonderful article in the Community Advocate about the kids from the high school. Melanie, did you write that one? Yeah, it was excellent, and with the picture of the kids, and I love the fact that this is a joint effort between the youth in our community and trying to get adults on board. And
Yeah.
I think the point too about the recycling stream being contaminated is huge. I think people, once they hear a lot about that, realize that these bags just really muck up the works everywhere. So I think that's a great point to emphasize, but I think it's a nice presentation.
Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I wasn't really practiced. I thought Travia was presenting it, so.
No,
Thank you for bearing with my freewheeling.
Yeah, I just want to thank you for being here tonight to present this, and I want to thank Sravia Tenakela. Is it? She was the original spearheading of this project last year.
Yeah.
And I can imagine when you undertake a project like that, you have a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of motivation. You want to see things happen quickly. And as it happened, it wasn't really quite ready last year. I just want to thank her for her patience in bringing it back through the cycle again and bringing something forward this year that I think is very strong and I imagine would get quite a lot of support. So I certainly appreciate it. And I think that, if anything, this maybe has much more impact on the retailers who use these than it does on the customers. I think the customers are very adaptable and, whatever the model is, they're going to be quick to adopt it. So I think it's going to be good.
We're very concerned about the retailers, and we intend to double back with them. We've already spoken with everyone in town once, but we heard concerns, and we want to go back and just help address some of their concerns and make sure they feel ready for this as well.
Yeah. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Okay. Brings us to reports. Julianne.
I have a couple of things to report on tonight. So on April 2nd, White Cliffs Committee met with the architects, and once again, they are impressed with how well the original building is holding up and recommended that we start thinking from top to bottom, meaning that we should start thinking about re-roofing and cleaning up some of the gutters, replacing some of the gutters. So that's where we are right now. We'll be considering that and seeing how the budget holds up to that. But they also went into the storage facility to check on the stained glass and some of the other artifacts. And also, the stained glass seemed to be in very good shape. They recommended crating them so that the lead part of the glass, stained glass windows, will not warp or anything in the coming years. And The other part of the good news about White Cliffs is that the website is now up to date. There's a lot of information on there if people are interested. As we've been having these meetings, more and more people have been attending, which is really nice to see. There's a lot of interest, so hope we can keep that up. So that's White Cliffs, and I just have a question about town meeting, which is in 2 weeks, and I didn't really notice because I didn't get to stop at the Lions Club sign, but are we going to have anything on the Lions Club sign indicating that town meeting is April 22nd, or maybe the electronic sign that we could put up somewhere?
Yes, we typically request the Lions put that up, and then the town has several roadside trailered signs that a couple of weeks leading up to town meeting, we usually put those out and run them pretty much nonstop right up until town meeting.
Excellent. So, speaking of that, also, we are changing the polling place May 14th, correct?
Yes.
We're all going to be voting at the Melican School. And I think, if we could get the word out about that too, so that people aren't confused and go to
Yes.
their original places.
Yes, the town
Thank
clerk
you.
will be sending out notifications. to
Excellent, thank
Yep.
you. That's it for me. Tim?
I attended last month's Council on Aging meeting, and I bring that up frequently. If anybody in town can use the senior center, has parents that are in that age group, please, if you haven't already, please go out and check out what they offer at the senior center. They do a fantastic job up there offering programs for the senior citizens of Northborough and the surrounding communities. Great programs. They really do care about what they do, and it's just a great place. Selectmen Perot and I conducted subcommittee interviews for the ZBA last week. Those went really well. We'll be talking about those in a little bit. That's it. That's all my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Okay, I want to thank both chiefs for your fire and police department reports. And Chief Parenti, I know that you like to put some things on Facebook and statistics, and I see the surprisey faces on reactions from some people. I think they enjoy seeing that, and maybe you're surprised by some of the things they're seeing, but I think that's all part of transparency, and that's a good thing. So thank you very much. I attended the Northborough K-8 meeting, and I was happy to see that both the town clerk and the police chief were there to talk about the fact that the voting is now going to be at Melican, and I think that was a great venue to do that. I know the superintendent had asked for you to be there, and thank you for doing that and explaining that. And you did explain the fact that notification would be made to the community about that, which obviously it has to be. People obviously need to know where they're voting. So thank you very much for talking about that at that meeting. I also received the Algonquin Regional High School School Committee Principal Report for the month of March. And I thought I was just going to mention a couple things, but there's so many things in this report, and I've heard her speak at the regional school committee meetings, and she tries to basically consolidate 4 pages of information into about 2 minutes. So, but I just wanted to mention a couple of the things that she has on here, just the organizations, Youth Art Month exhibit, Computer Programming Club, Team 1100, which is robotics, Quiz Bowl, Junior Class Steering Committee is going ahead with their prom on May 18th. Sophomore class hosted a successful volleyball tournament. Athletics are talking about varsity basketball, track, we had some wonderful people who did well with that, wrestling, departmental updates, fine arts, jazz night, Central District MAJE Festival, Jazz Festival. Just so many different things going on at the high school, and the superintendent specifically asked me to thank Northborough for all the support, because that's obviously both towns coordinating things to make things happen for the kids. So I wanted to mention that as well. I also wanted to thank the Chris Lindquist, who is our library director, for the letter that I received dated March 22nd, discussing the planning study and the latest going on with that and the use of the interior of the building. So he did a great job with that. And we all attended the April 4th meeting at the library regarding the proposed fire department building. And I think the architectural firm did a wonderful job. John, what is the name of that firm? Roberts?
It's Johnson Roberts.
Johnson Roberts firm did a wonderful job. And John also had a lot of things to say about this. And I know that it's obviously a warrant article at town meeting, but I think it was a very informative meeting. People from the public were there as well as the financial committees from our town with us. So it was very, very good information, and I think the more that people can watch the replay, the better, so that they know what they're voting on at town meeting. And I also had the opportunity to be a judge at the Northborough Ed Foundation Trivia Night last Friday, and that was a lot of fun. Jason was a team member with a particular team. I'm sure you guys did well, but I don't know what place you came in.
We did well, but not nearly well enough.
But you had good costumes. So Jack Kane, who is on the regional school committee, was the MC. And Karen Skopetsky, Tom Lowe, Fred George, and John Coder and I were all judges. And a lot of tabulating, but it was a lot of fun. So a lot of money comes in with that group, and it's a great organization that raises money for the schools and school grants and so forth. So thank you. That ends my report.
Jason?
Yes, just to piggyback on what Leslie was saying, the Northborough Ed Foundation Trivia Night, Friday night, as always, a great event, and I'll just add the additional information that the contest was won by the team called Let's Look It Up, also known as the Librarians, who, not to be bitter or anything, but basically they're spending their
calling for an independent
entire year
Yes.
preparing for this. So they were just a fantastic team, always very competitive, and a multi-winner of this. The trophy is on display in the public library and will be for the entire year. It's a kind of a trophy cup, as you're probably familiar with, but it's got a brain stuffed into the top of it, so very entertaining. As Leslie mentioned, we had the presentation on the fire station on Thursday night, and it was certainly very informative. I just wanted to make the point that what's presented thus far is a conceptual design for the purpose of understanding the size, of the building and also the lot that's required to house it. And this allows the next phase of the project to go forward, which would be more of a schematic design portion, which will lead to cost estimates and a bid beginning next year. So a lot of work has been put into it. It does have a lot of moving parts to the plan that all have to come together. So we certainly would appreciate your support at town meeting for that project. And then finally, and Kathy, you can help me out with this one, the Master Plan Steering Committee is now out with their third survey.
Yes, it went live today.
It did. And so that's online now. You can go to the Master Plan Steering, you can navigate through the town website to the Master Plan page, and from there a link to the survey,
Yes.
which is on SurveyMonkey.
And also northboroughmp.com.
Northborough,
Northboroughmasterplan.com.
okay, northboroughmp.com.
Yes.
And that's Northborough
Just
With-
1-0.
with just the O, no
Yes.
UGH. Okay. And could you just fill it in a little bit as to the content of this survey?
Sure. The, this particular survey is our lengthiest, so please bear with it. But it's probably our most important part of the survey process, and this relates to all the recommendations that are coming out of the master plan. So there's a series of goals that have been arrived at and agreed upon by the steering committee, and then now these are the recommendations as to how you implement those goals. So we're asking people to take a look at those and rank them. You're not ranking every single one of them, depending on the question. You're either picking your top 3, your top 4. And so it's in each one of the categories: land use, open space, transportation, public facilities. There's a couple others, but And it'll be up until the 26th, April 26th.
Till the 26th, and in particular at town meeting on the 22nd, there will be some informational thing for people to
Yes.
pick up a flyer or something. And
Yes,
have that
yeah, we'll have the
link, and they can
QR
use it.
code at town meeting that
Yeah.
people can take it there.
Very good, while you're listening to John's presentation.
I didn't say that,
Wow, tough.
just that, you know,
Right.
during the intermission at town meeting. Is there an intermission?
No,
Right, there is no intermission.
Just gonna go with the motion this year.
Right. And if I could, Madam Chair, I think we have a new guest in the room. Is this Stravia? Stravia Tenikella?
know where it was, so I've been running around.
we're sorry.
You were right. People go wrong place.
I've been working towards getting classes back for the last few years. I'm really happy to have Jean on my side. She's been a great support.
Yeah.
I'm really looking forward to seeing you all at town meeting.
Great.
Oh,
Thank you for your
We're
work.
sorry you
Appreciate you
didn't
tonight.
find us earlier.
Yeah, yes. Thank you very much. That
And-
concludes my report.
Thanks for doing that, because I wasn't sure how I was gonna,
Mhm.
when you came in, I'm like, I think we need to recognize her. But I wasn't sure if you were the right person. Okay, just a little bit about the moving parts of the fire station, and the procedures that are gonna be needed to be done. Most of you know at town meeting that there's a vote at town meeting. It has to be successful and get through town meeting, but it's also on the ballot. So because it's a Proposition 2.5 override, you won't be voting just for candidates at this election. You'll be voting to either approve or disapprove this site. So encouraging people to not only attend town meeting, but also to attend the voting and make sure you vote. It's very important that as many people as possible have input in this and vote, because it's going to be an expensive project, one that I personally think is well worth the money, but everybody needs to give us their input, and everybody's got to become involved. So please, don't just vote at town meeting, and vote at the election too. That concludes my report. John?
No report?
Okay. All right, public comments. Yes, go ahead, up there.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Rebecca Foley-Mahopoulos, and I'm here tonight representing the Northborough Community Affairs Committee. I'd like to just tell you all about an upcoming event of ours, the Louise Houle Annual Town Cleanup, which will take place on Saturday, April 27th, at the Ellsworth McAfee Park. The cleanup will kick off at 7:45 a.m., so bright and early, with an appreciation breakfast for all of our volunteers. It will go from 7:45 a.m. to 10 a.m., and that's where you can get your bags, gloves, street assignments for where you'd be cleaning up. We'll have we'll have coffee from Dunkin' Donuts, some pastries from Wegmans, and some chicken biscuits from Chick-fil-A, and I think their cow will be handing them out. And another sponsor is actually the Northborough Junior Women's Club as well, so we thank them. And we host this event along with the Northborough Women's Club, which I should have mentioned at the beginning, but we appreciate doing this with them each and every year. You can sign up ahead of time on our website, the Northborough Community Affairs Committee's website, if you have a particular street or area you like to clean up. Or you can just come to the morning breakfast and get your street assignment then. And you can clean up anytime on Saturday and Sunday. It doesn't have to be right away after you get your street assignment, as long as it's done by Sunday night so the DPW can pick up the bags on Monday morning. So anytime you have a chance, Saturday or Sunday, that would be great. So I just wanted to come tonight to spread the word to the community and hope that lots of people will get involved to help beautify our wonderful town. And I think it's a great event for families to do together. I remember in the past few years since I've lived here, seeing families out collecting trash together. It's something I like to do with my young sons every year, kind of teaching them and not to litter, and this is why, So it's a good learning. It's a good learning family event we can do every year, and we look forward to it. One other piece that we're going to be doing this year, for people who come, we are going to be asking that they bring a food item for the Northborough Food Pantry. So when they come to the breakfast, if they can bring something, that would be great. Just another way to give back. And this year, we're actually, we have unveiled a new logo for the Northborough Community Affairs Committee. So the first, I think, 100 people will get a reusable shopping bag, so with our new logo on it. So it kind of goes hand in hand with tonight's theme. So thank you for letting me take the time to plug our event.
No, and thank you. It's always a great event, and it's always nice to see the town after everybody's hard work, so thank you for.
Rebecca, could you just repeat the date one more time?
Sure. It's Saturday, April 27th.
Thank you.
I have flyers. Should I hand them out, or? No.
Be happy to take.
Oh, okay, I have a few.
So Rebecca,
Yes.
the one thing is that if you do your cleanup, like just signing up on the, online.
Yes.
Is you have the bag ready for Monday morning, right? Because
Right,
then
leave it out.
DPW's great, and they've been helping with that too, right?
Yes, yes, if you could leave it out like Sunday night in that location. That's why it's very important to either sign up online or come the morning of April 27th, that Saturday morning, to get a street assignment, so the DPW knows where to go to pick up the trash bags that have been filled. So, good clarifying question, thank you for asking.
Thank you for doing this.
Of course.
And DPW too, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you. Any other public comments?
Good evening. My name is Bill Donovan. I reside at 3B Pondview Way here in Northborough. And I'd like to present you with a letter from, copy of a letter from our president of the Pondview Way Condominium Trust, Philippe Molif, on behalf of the residents at Pondview Way, which is a 12-unit complex that abuts 5 Barefoot Road. 5 Barefoot Road is a small patch of land at the intersection of Barefoot Road and Solomon Pond Road, at the traffic light just prior to the entry to 290 East. This property, consistently partial of wetlands, is an oddly shaped lot that recently sold for $10,000 to a developer. Attached to this letter is a proposed plan submitted by Berlin Realty Trust to the Conservation Commission for construction of a new daycare facility. The lot abutting substantial wetlands is an inappropriate siting for daycare center. We believe that the town of Northborough and its citizens need to be aware of this development and to keep informed about the latest efforts to develop this site. Recently, the zoning board denied the developer's request for variance, requests to construct residential homes on the property, and now the developer claims special treatment under the Dover Amendment for this use, and we believe the public needs to be aware. The building of the new U-Haul facility and the expansion of Iron Mountain in this industrial zone have vastly increased the traffic at the intersection of Barefoot Road and Solomon Pond Road. Between the wetlands, breeding ground for insects, and the location of the proposed daycare at this intersection, this would be a dangerous place for children. The residents of Northborough need to be made aware of this situation, and we ask that this board please keep informed about this proposed development, which is currently still pending at the Conservation Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you for your input. It will go through the proper boards, I'm sure, but thank you for making us aware of it. Anyone else? Hearing no more public comments. Presentation of fiscal year 2020 capital budget. John.
Okay, at your last meeting, we had the annual fiscal 20 budget hearing. We went through all the operating budgets for the town, general government, the schools, regional high school, and the Assabet Vocational Regional High School. Tonight, I just want to run briefly through the capital budget, which is coming before town meeting, run you through the articles fairly quickly, and I can certainly answer any questions that you may have. Yep. She's saving the battery by turning it off. Thank you. So first of all, just by way of overview, we're going to talk about the difference between the capital improvement plan and the capital budget. We'll go over the articles that are, as I said, coming before town meeting on April 22nd, and talk a little bit about the funding sources and potential tax impact of these projects. Just by way of reference, it's important for people to know that we do have a 6-year capital improvement plan. So this plan includes all the projects that we're contemplating for the next 6 years. Those are not going to town meeting for approval this year. Essentially, the way the planning process works is we want to plan out all of our capital projects and looking out at least 6 years. The plan actually goes much further than 6 years because we look at replacement cycles 10 or 20 years. But in terms of realistic planning and communication to the public, we do a 6-year plan. Bond rating agencies like to see a 6-year plan as well. It's part of our credit worthiness review because they want to make sure that you're appropriately investing in your equipment, your infrastructure, and your buildings. The difference between the 6-year plan and the capital budget is essentially the capital budget is the first year. So the capital budget is the projects that are actually going to town meeting this year for funding and approval, and we intend to construct or procure the equipment or infrastructure during the upcoming 12-month cycle. In the warrant booklet is the Financial Planning Committee's report, as well as a copy of the 6-year financial plan, and you can go through fiscal 20 and see all the projects that we're contemplating for the upcoming year. So in terms of the fiscal 20 capital budget, Articles 12 through 16, general fund, these are primarily equipment replacement projects. There's a couple of studies that we're looking at for water and sewer, but essentially Articles 12 through 16 are investments in our infrastructure, our equipment, and our facilities. Article 20 for $3.5 million is the fire station. So this is the appropriation required for the land acquisition, as well as the engagement of the architect to do the full design to come back to town meeting in 2020 with a fully developed, designed, and bid project at that point. Now, in addition to the general fund, we have a couple of projects under the water and sewer enterprise. Those projects are financed basically using free cash from the water and sewer enterprise fund. So these aren't tax dollars, these are fees for service. Essentially, water and sewer enterprise funds are run like a business, so the fees cover the expense of providing the service, including capital investments like buildings, equipment, and infrastructure. In total, we're looking at about $4.9 million in terms of capital investment this year. As you know from our discussions back in December, one of the things that we track very closely is the town's investment in its capital, infrastructure, equipment, buildings. It's important that we make regular and consistent investment in our capital, because if we don't, as you know, equipment and buildings will deteriorate over time, and if you don't reinvest in those, what will happen is as more and more time passes, you'll find yourself with essentially an unfunded liability, and all your equipment will need to be replaced at the same time. You'll have a lot of building and infrastructure needs. You don't want to do that. You want to make a consistent annual investment, and what we're proposing for fiscal 20, I think you're going to find is a very economical and reasonable investment in our capital infrastructure. So this table, again, is in the warrant, but essentially we have 9 projects that are coming forward, totaling $4.9 million. We've got police cruisers, an ambulance, the fire station project, a couple of DPW truck replacements, our annual roadway improvements. There's a water and sewer garage design. It's basically a planning study. We have an investment in our Assabet water tank rehabilitation. This is just design work. And last but not least, we've got some communication security upgrades for the high school. So I'm going to go through these very quickly. Again, the information is in the warrant, along with the Financial Planning Committee's review and recommendations to town meeting with regard to these capital projects. One important thing to mention here is this pie chart shows the various funding sources. One of the things that Northborough has been extremely successful with is finding ways to do pay-as-you-go capital. Years ago, prior to fiscal 12, virtually all capital investment, be it equipment, buildings, or infrastructure, were all financed with debt. And that's a model that we've moved away from. We finance large capital acquisitions or large building or facility investments now with debt. For instance, the fire station project that we'll talk about in a moment in a little bit of detail, that will be financed with debt. But all of our equipment, DPW equipment, fire equipment replacements, and $1.1 million every year into our roadways is all done on a pay-as-you-go basis. Now, the beauty of this is, over time, you stop charging things to debt, so your debt service goes down, and that creates capacity within your operating budget to invest in your capital. So if you look at this pie chart, repurposed bonds, 1.38 million, this green piece here, that's remaining budget from the Lincoln Street building project. We came in under budget on that project, and we have those remaining funds that are available for reappropriation at town meeting. Those bonds were issued, so that debt impact is already hit. The amazing thing about the Lincoln Street building project is typically you'll budget 5 or 10% contingency for unexpected conditions and things that go wrong. I can't tell you that how pleased I am with that project. We used virtually none of our contingency, and we had basically no change orders. That's why we have remaining budget. That was a $25.5 million project, half of which the state, about $10.4 million the state paid for. But that's available to us that we're going to roll forward into the fire station project with no additional tax impact. The other big piece of pie here, this blue piece, is free cash. Under our free cash plan, we try to limit the amount of one-time revenues that go into the operating budget for recurring expenses, such as personnel and other recurring annual operating expenses. So we divert free cash and one-time revenues to pay for capital. It's a perfect match, and it is in accordance with our free cash policy. Then we've got some small ones here. The Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund, $145,000. So the two projects that are coming forward that are Water and Sewer Enterprise Fund projects, those are going to be financed with essentially free cash from those enterprise funds. And then over here in this red portion here, that's about $2.1 million in general obligation bonds. That's the portion of this phase of the fire station building project that will require debt. So, so Dawn Rand had mentioned earlier that we have not only the vote at town meeting, but also the ballot. The vote at town meeting requires a two-thirds vote to approve the expenditure of debt, but it also requires a debt exclusion vote that'll take place at the ballot. And without both those steps, that would not be approved. So we're looking this year at $2.1 million in bonds. We also have over here EMS revolving fund bonds, $315,000. That's for the purchase of a new ambulance. The debt service associated with that would be paid out of the emergency, basically the ambulance fees. So that won't have any additional tax impact. So the fee for service for ambulance would pay for any debt associated with that replacement. So the nice thing is, as I said years ago, this pie chart would be one circle in one color, and it would say debt, bonds. And we've done, I think, an excellent job since fiscal 12 of finding other sources to pay for these projects, including grant funding, that doesn't add to the town's debt. So what we've seen is our level of debt has declined over the years. We are down to about 4% of our operating budget requiring payment for debt and interest. Now, bond rating agencies don't like to see you any higher than about 15%. Our policy is 5 to 10%. So right now, we actually are at the bottom floor of the amount of debt that we would carry as a corporate entity. So we pay our debt off, it comes down, now is the time, and we've made capacity for the next large investment in our buildings, which would be the fire station. So that's the way you work. If you were running at 10 or 15% of your operating budget at debt, you have a significant level of debt. it would be difficult to take on another large project. We have paid our debt off. It's declined over the years because of excellent policies and financial planning. Now is the time to invest in the next large project. So let's talk about these individual projects just quickly. I'm going to go through them. I mentioned a moment ago an ambulance replacement. So on the warrant is a replacement of a 2012 model ambulance. Essentially, the new one comes in, and that takes the lead. The 2016 ambulance becomes the secondary backup, and then we keep the oldest one in reserve, basically for emergencies. As I said before, debt service on the bonds for the ambulance will be paid for out of the EMS revolving fund. What we've been able to do in recent years is, although it's paid for with debt, we issue bands, bond anticipation notes, which are interest only, and we typically issue those for 3 to 5 years. What we've been able to do is, before issuing permanent debt for these ambulances, we've actually been able to pay that temporary debt off, so we never actually issue permanent debt for the ambulance. So hopefully we'll be able to do that again. We'll see, but we have the flexibility of issuing permanent debt if necessary. In terms of the police department, we are replacing 3 patrol vehicles. We have 13 vehicles in total for the department, and the patrol vehicles are replaced on about a 4 or 5 year schedule, or 100,000 miles. And these are the frontline emergency response vehicles. We also then have administrative vehicles, and those are replaced on a 6 to 8 year cycle. And we've been very fortunate here as well to be able to stay on this preferred replacement schedule. If you remember, back in 2015, we had a full operational review done on our department. One of the things they looked at was our capital and our equipment replacement, and essentially the consultant said, you are on an ideal replacement schedule. So if we have 13 vehicles, essentially we replace 2 1 year, 3 the next, and we rotate on that cycle to make sure that these are all replaced, so that when you call and you need help, they're not breaking down. So the other nice thing is the chief is very good. Chief Liver, police chief, is good about, we purchase extended warranty. So essentially, we have little to no maintenance budgets or issues while we have the cruisers. About the time the extended warranty ends in the 100,000 miles, and these are a lot of idling miles. It's not just the miles, but these cruisers are idling a lot. It's a lot of wear and tear on the engines. But basically, about the time that you start to have trouble with these vehicles and the extended warranty ends, we're on a regular replacement schedule. The cost for this also includes outfitting the vehicles with new equipment and radios. DPW capital requests. We've got a couple of things. One is replacement of a 2001 ton dump truck. These things typically have about a 10 to 12 year useful life. But what we do is we filter these trucks all the way down. And if you're a truck in the DPW world, you end your life as the dirtiest, ugliest truck out there, and it's usually for tar patch. So it's used as a patch truck. And so if you look down at DPW and you see the patch truck, that is the oldest vehicle that they have, always in the worst condition, because it's filled with nasty tar and patch, and you don't want to use good new vehicles for that typically. But we're getting a replacement for the old patch truck. The difference is this one here, in addition to having a plow, this one here will have this covered body and a utility draw that slides out. And one of the primary purposes for this particular truck will be use in the cemetery department, so that you can put things on that you can slide out and slide in, so they are protected from the elements. So that's the replacement of the 1 ton pickup truck. And by the way, so these are replaced about every 10 to 12 years, typically. Sometimes we'll hang on to a patch truck for as long as it continues to run. But I actually, in conversations with the DPW director earlier tonight, he said they went to move it, and basically the bed on it is completely gone. So we'll trade it in for what they'll give us, but there's no hanging on to that 2,000 for any longer. The second vehicle with DPW that we're replacing is a 20-ton dump truck. These are the really big, sometimes people refer to them as a 6-wheel dump truck, but these are the really big trucks that are used for plowing and for spreading salt. So this replacement would be for a dump truck with a spreader, salt spreader, and a plow. Now, we have 10 of these. They have a useful life of about 20 years. And so they do an excellent job of taking care of these, and they wash them down. But obviously, when you're dealing with salt, it's very corrosive. It's tough on the vehicles. But we do get 20 years out of these vehicles because we maintain them so well. So obviously, if you have 10 vehicles, what would be an ideal replacement schedule would be every 2 years or every other year, you'd be replacing one of these. So we are on that replacement schedule. It ensures that we have safe equipment and appropriate equipment to do the plowing that we need to do. You've heard me speak about this many times. This is the road improvement and maintenance. The town of Northborough, back in 2014, I believe, we did a pavement management analysis where we went out and we assessed every single road in town and rated that road. And then, working with a consultant, we developed a plan for improving our roadways. And so we know that if we don't invest at least $1.1 million in our roads, we will be on a deteriorating trajectory for our overall road condition. And once you lose a road, I believe it's $22 to $25 per square yard to replace, but you can maintain it oftentimes for $1 or $2 for that same roadway. So it's very important that you maintain your roadways and you don't lose them. Once you lose them, the price goes through the roof for bringing them around. So as part of town meeting warrant, we have a combination. We get about $500,000 in Chapter 90 transportation funds from the state. There's $300,000 as part of the base DPW budget for roadway investment. And then what we're requesting here is $300,000 from the capital, through the capital budget in the form of one-time available funds, free cash, to get to that magic $1.1 million. So this is a chart from the most recent updated pavement management plan. And you can see where we started in fiscal 2014. We were about a 71 back then in terms of our overall pavement ranking. And it's just like your grades in school. 70 is a C, maybe C minus. You really want to be in the B plus range. But the problem is when you get down here, if we only invested what we get from the state, $500,000 in the Chapter 90 transportation funds, our roads would be failing and we'd be losing roads. The base would go and we would not be able to afford to bring these roads back. And that's critical for us because failure to invest in your infrastructure, particularly your roads, is essentially an unfunded liability. You can put it off and you can ignore it until you can no longer ignore it. And when you can no longer ignore it, you're looking at tens of millions of dollars to fix those roads. It's very important that we make annual investment. But as you can see, where would I love to be? I'd like to be on this yellow trajectory. That's $2 million a year investment in our roads, and we'd be at an 80 rating by 2023. By the way, just as a kind of a point of reference, if you've ever been to Disney, Disney's goal is to have all their paved surfaces at an 85 or better. So when you go to Disney, you're rarely tripping over potholes or cracks, right? Everything is beautifully paved. For us, if we can get up to an 80, that would put us ahead of the vast majority of communities in the Commonwealth. But at a minimum, this is the blue line that we're on. If we continue with this base budget that we've been able to put together of $1.1 million, 5 years from now, we'll be better off. We won't be worse off. In an ideal world, we'd be on this trajectory. The reality is, we should be trying to get somewhere between these two lines. This is the bare minimum, this blue line here, the 1.1 million, but it would be great if we could be putting 1.5, 1.6 million and be on a little bit stronger trajectory. But again, we're in much better shape than most communities, particularly communities our size, And this is a very healthy, reasonable investment in our infrastructure. We, as a policy board or committee, you know that if we don't do anything else, if we don't increase funding by raising taxes or convincing the state to increase their Chapter 90 transportation funding, which you have lobbied very heavily for the last 5 years. But if those things don't happen, we won't be worse off. We won't be as well off as we'd like to be, but we won't be worse off. We won't be losing roads. And that's a good place and a comfortable place to be. But in order to stay on that, we need $300,000 in free cash under Article 16. In addition to the general fund, DPW, as I said, we have got a couple of projects, water and sewer. One is a water and sewer garage design. Basically, it's a study to look at, this is the water and sewer, it's always affectionately referred to as the water barn. It goes back to 1964, and it was originally built to house the water operation. Since then, we have sewers, and we also have a good amount of equipment. And if you look at the end here, you've got a jetter, you've got a backhoe, you've got several pieces of very expensive equipment that's sitting out in the elements. And this building in general was built in 1964. It looks better than it is because we painted it, and we replaced the skylights, and we've tried to take care of it as best we can. But there's a space issue, but the mechanical systems are old. They need some attention. So we're going to look at the possibility of building renovating this building and building basically a storage space for this equipment. The vacuum truck and the jetter, these are things that are used to deal with clogs in the system. These things have water in them, and anytime they use them, they have to drain them and put antifreeze in them if they're going to be sitting outside. How much is the jetter, Scott?
It was $120,000. That's the middle one. The Watts trailer is on the end. That was $90,000. Part of the concern with having antifreeze in them is you have to get it out. We're not allowed to put antifreeze into the sewer lines when we jet sewer lines. We're also not allowed to put antifreeze into our water gates. So when it sits out in those conditions right there, it's full of antifreeze. Before we can mobilize it, we need to get it indoors, cleaned out, washed out, put with potable water, and then put in the street. It's cumbersome from a response perspective.
So in addition to the expense, you've got $300,000 or $400,000 worth of equipment exposed to the elements, but it also comes down to an efficiency, being able to respond to these service calls and so forth. So all we're looking for at this point is $70,000 to look at just a planning and feasibility study to see what makes sense out there. I don't want to jump too far ahead of ourselves, but one of the things that we're going to be engaging Assabet, our regional vocational school, in is the possibility that if we design it and pour the slab, they may be able to help us out with the actual construction. So we've done a lot of buildings with them, and they've been very helpful. And this might be a size and of a nature that might be appealing to them. So as always, we look for grants and we look for partnerships. We try to find any way to pay as we go for as much as we can. So, but the first thing we need to do is to look at what would be appropriate on this. And again, not only this design work and planning, but any expenditure would be financed through the water and sewer fees. The big project coming, and it's coming next year, but this year we're looking at the Assabet storage tank. This is our water storage tank, looking at a recoating and a rehab. So is it 70 or 75,000, Scott?
That's $70,000.
So this is $70,000 to hire consultants to develop the specs for what needs to be done to rehab and improve this this tank. This is our primary tank, 3.5 million gallons up on Assabet Hill. Both the study and any rehab that's associated with it would be paid for and financed out of the Water Enterprise Fund. So this year we're looking at using free cash from that enterprise fund to hire the consultant to do the bid specs to put the project out. Right now I think we're carrying $750,000 for the rehab, which would go to town meeting in fiscal 20. So this year is just the planning and the design work. The last area that we have is a school request. They only have one this year. And it was the top request from the superintendent and the school committee, and I'm very pleased to say that we were able to work with them collaboratively and fit this into the fiscal '20 budget. But essentially, it's communications and security enhancements to the K-8 schools. So Lincoln Street is our most recently renovated school in town, and so that has all of the latest technology and security in it. However, the middle school, Proctor, Peasley, they do not, and so this request is $185,000, would be to put new communications, keyless entry, and appropriate security and cameras into those elementary schools. So the superintendent and the central administration has done a similar upgrade to the K-8 schools in Southborough. We've done, as I said, Lincoln Street in Northborough because it was part of the overall renovation addition project that we did. And now's the time to make these upgrades for the K-8 schools as well. Working with the police chief and the company that they've used previously, we feel pretty confident that it's a good project, and they have experience making these upgrades in other schools in a cost-effective manner. Last but not least, you had, I'm not going to get into too much of this, but you had a 2-hour presentation, a meeting last Thursday on April 4th with the architect for the fire station land acquisition and design fees. This is, again, a very conceptual design. You're showing the front elevations of a proposed fire station. But in a nutshell, we've completed the feasibility study regarding our fire station. We know that we cannot fit the programmatic needs of the department in the current building or on the current site. It's just simply too small. The existing structure was built in 1975, and it was built for a volunteer department. Now we have 23 full-time people, and we have an EMS ambulance service that we run out of there, which is 68% of the calls. So we need more space. Current station is 11,500 square feet. The proposed station is somewhere between 23 and 26,000, depending on how you count the circulation space that's needed. But what we're looking for at this town meeting is not the full project. What we're looking for is sufficient funding to acquire land, because there is no way we can expand or renovate the existing station without either acquiring adjacent land or a parcel someplace else. Right now, the committee is recommending acquisition of 61 to 65 West Main Street in 10 Monroe, which is essentially the old Pierce gas station across from Dunkin' Donuts. So the $3.5 million is a request sufficient to acquire the necessary land and then to pay the architect design fees and the owner's project manager, which we're required to have by state law. They actually have to come on board before we engage the architect again. But we're at the point now where we've completed this feasibility study. We've identified a place for a new station, and essentially we are unable to proceed at this point any further unless we get another appropriation. So we need money to engage the architect and an owner's project manager, and we need money to pursue a parcel where we can build the new station on. So that's the $3.5 million that's being requested. And as I mentioned earlier, the positive thing is of that 3.5, 1.38 million of that is remaining bond proceeds from the completed Lincoln Street School. So that will not add to any additional tax impact. So this capital budget, I'm pleased to report, continues to invest in our equipment, our infrastructure, and our facilities. We are not creating unfunded liabilities here. We are not kicking the can. We are making regular and appropriate level of investment in our equipment, our infrastructure, and our facilities. The nice thing about the fiscal '20 capital budget is, as all the budgets that we've done for capital since fiscal '12, is we really try to link one-time revenues to these one-time capital expenses. We're not issuing debt. To the extent that we can, we're doing pay-as-you-go. And what that does is, over time, it minimizes our debt service, which creates capacity for larger projects, because you have to do larger projects. You have to redo your schools. You have to redo your fire station. At some point, we're going to have to talk about town hall. So these are projects. We've done the senior center. We've done the library. The key is if you plan well, they don't all come and want to be done next year. So one of the things that you see communities struggle with when it comes to capital planning is they create a plan, right? And you got a couple projects in the out years, and then you got a couple projects this year, and then next year is, $45 million in projects. Because nobody wants to be in the out years, but they recognize they can't get funded this year. So you wind up with that on-deck circle being full of projects. And good planning is your ability to spread these out logically and to matching them up with funding sources like MSBA grants and so forth, and to spread them out and to match them to your debt service so that you're not just adding debt on top of debt on top of debt. Next thing you know, 15% of your budget is going to pay for debt service. As I said, right now we're down at about 4%. We're ready for another significant project. The timing is good for us. Just a little bit of a fun fact for you. Since fiscal 12, and this is when the Board of Selectmen, working with Appropriations, Financial Planning, and the K-8 School Committee, adopted a free cash plan to not use these one-time revenues in the operating budget. So since fiscal 12, we've done over $16.5 million in pay-as-you-go capital. That is just phenomenal. That is absolutely phenomenal. 11.35 million in free cash and a little over $5 million in other funding sources. And that does not, those numbers do not include a $10 million MSBA grant that we received. It doesn't include any grant funding that we've been able to obtain. Good example, in this fiscal year, we just received about $250,000, $256,000, I think, in grant funding to replace the breathing apparatus for the fire department. If that grant didn't come through, you would see in the fiscal 20 budget a $290,000 request. So again, you put something out 6 years in a plan, every year it moves up. How many tries, Chief? 3 tries? 3 tries for this federal grant to pay for that breathing apparatus. That's why you plan for this stuff. And so for 3 years, at the point at which if we failed to be successful in getting that grant this year, we'd be able to go to town meeting and say, listen, we tried 3 times. This is the only grant program out there. We were unable to obtain it. This has to be replaced at this point. And town meeting historically has appreciated that. But they also appreciate the fact that even though something is in the plan for 6 years, within those 6 years, they fall out and they disappear. Why? Because we're able to get grants or donations or other funding sources. And for those 6 years, we're scrambling to find any way to pay for this other than tax dollars. And so we've been successful. Another successful story for us is this year was $50,000 to rehab the snack shack building down at the baseball field, Memorial Field. We were able to work with Assabet Valley students, and for $10,000 out of the operating budget, they have completely rehabbed that building. New roof, new windows, new siding. They're going to come back in the spring and redo the interior of the snack shack. And they rehabbed the pump house storage building as well. So again, in order to get on Assabet Valley's list for these types of projects, they're planning out 2, 3, 4 years. And so our planning allows us to try to work with them and cycle our needs. Like I mentioned, potentially the water and sewer barn. So we want to be able to seek out those other funding sources. So I hope that, we go to town meeting. I know this body appreciates the fact that, by the time we come to town meeting when we're seeking funds, we've exhausted all other avenues of potential grants or donations or in-kind types of projects. And at this point, we're coming forward with something that needs to be done. I just leave you with the fact that by the time the capital budget comes to the Board of Selectmen in this format, in this presentation, the Financial Planning Committee has spent months and months reviewing these projects in great detail, and they have unanimously recommended approval. At their last meeting, the Appropriations Committee reviewed these projects, including the fire station project, and they have unanimously recommended approval as well. So as always, when we go to town meeting, if we've all done our jobs well, and we have good information and good process, all the boards and committees up at the head table feel comfortable unanimously recommending approval of these budgets and these projects. And as a town meeting member or someone showing up to town meeting to vote, your job is to do the background, the nitty-gritty, the 6 plus 9 months worth of background, so that you can make an informed recommendation to the general public. And really, when they come, they should be able to rely on you and the other boards and committees to make an informed recommendation. And so for us, it's very powerful when all those boards and committees are on the same page. And again, I go all the way back to December of 2018, when you all got together, and you have all the details of the trend analysis for the last 10 years looking back, forecasts for the next 5 years looking forward, and within that context, we're making our recommendations and we're making our plans, so we know what the repercussions and the implications of doing this or not doing it has on our operating budget, as well as our capital plan in town. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have, but I hope you feel comfortable supporting these projects at town meeting.
Any questions? Leslie?
Yeah, John, thank you for the presentation. And again, I'm always glad that these are taped so that people can watch these, and hopefully they do that before town meeting so people understand what they're voting for and can replay it and watch it over and over again if they need to. So I think this is great information. I have to say, the only thing that makes me nervous is your description of the 1-ton pickup truck with plow, where it's a slide-out bed for cemetery operations. It conjures up a little bit of an odd image to me.
Without,
I don't know if there's another way to put that.
well, it is what it is. You don't want to
Slide
be
out
driving
something.
with these types of items in an open truck in the rain and the sleet and snow. You want to be able to contain these things until you can do an appropriate burial.
That's not what I'm really referring to, but, okay.
The truck has other, I mean, the truck isn't its sole purpose. It has a slide-out bed for sensitive equipment, so that when you go to a job site, it slides out and you have the stuff that, again, you don't want to be driving with in an open-air bed, and you want to have access to it, but it's used primarily in cemetery operations.
Sensitive equipment.
And sensitive equipment, yeah.
Anyone else? Tim?
One question I get asked all the time is what happens to the equipment that's being replaced?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and it's real simple. Just like the ambulance that we talked about, they go down, you go from being the front line to the backup to the emergency reserve, and then you get traded in. So when I started here 16 years ago, I first did a review of all of our rolling stock, and we had a crazy amount. I want to say it was like 150 pieces of rolling stock that was on our insurance. And we had a DPW director at the time who loved to hang on to every piece of equipment and never get rid of it. We do a much better job now. We cycle it through until, like in DPW, you're the patch truck. When you're done and you no longer function as the asphalt patch truck, you're done. You're done. So sometimes these things get towed in. But the short answer, Tim, is they get traded in. They get traded in, and the requests that you see before you is net of any trade-in. The reality is, by the time we do trade those vehicles in, some of the larger pieces sometimes have like an old backhoe or something like that. You know, you might get $10,000 or $15,000 for something like that. But as far as old cruisers and old trucks, you know, you're talking about $500, $1,000, but we do trade them in. The key is not to just keep accumulating this stuff. You know, you have a replacement schedule. The oldest piece has to go. If you want something new coming the other side, my policy is you have to get rid of something. We're not just going to keep accumulating this stuff.
Perfect, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, I just want to make the point that, as you mentioned, a lot of this, the hallmark of this whole plan is planning, that we're not being very reactive to things that suddenly emerge or pop up unexpectedly. We have the 6-year capital plan. Most of these projects come forward. We find funding sources, as you've said, other than tax dollars for many of them along the way. And so in my mind, a key point about this is that It's very well planned. Everyone understands among the boards and committees, at least, how this program works and what to expect from year to year to year. It's rare that we have a circumstance arise where some unexpected capital item occurs or whatever, but when it does, we usually have the flexibility and the capacity to address it and move things around a little bit. So it's comforting to know year to year that we have this under control and there aren't many surprises and that we can address a lot of the capital items on a regular maintenance basis and keep ourselves in very sound financial footing all along the way. The second point I guess I wanted to make is, as you mentioned, this year's large ticket item is the fire station. And I think I'd just like to go back and remind people that over this last 10 to 15 year period, there have been a succession of building projects, all very successful. We've had the library project with some grant funding. We've had the senior center project, which has been just a wonderful place in our town. We've had the Lincoln Street School, and now we're coming up on fire station. Prior to that, we had the renovation of the Algonquin Regional High School. So I think it's another important thing to observe is that there's kind of a rotation there. We have a lot of different building needs to address over time, and we're trying to make sure that all of them get the appropriate attention. Some of them serve different segments of the community, but we're trying to approach it in a very balanced way. So.
Yeah. So, I do workshops for the MMA and the Managers Association and other towns on best practices in capital planning. One of the things that communities struggle with the most is when they get around to doing real planning and a true assessment of what their needs are, the numbers are staggering. It's no different, as I always say, in your personal life. If you fail to maintain your vehicles, you fail to paint your house, you're not watching the roof, you're not maintaining your furnace, and then someone comes in and they assess all that stuff, all of a sudden your car might need to be replaced, your roof is at the end of its useful life. By the way, roofs do not sneak up on you, okay? They're 20 to 30 years, they don't come out of nowhere. If you don't know a roof is coming, you never hear me come in and say to you, the roof's leaking, you have to replace it, the inside of the building's being destroyed, mold's coming in. You never hear that. We replace the roofs when they're at the end of the useful life, and we replace them before that stuff happens. That's good planning. But a lot of communities that haven't been in that position, they've got a huge backlog to get through. And, we were similar to that years ago. I go back to 10 years. We had to invest a significant amount of money in our DPW equipment because we had a director at the time that prided himself on running things into the ground because it was the Yankee frugal way to do it. Unfortunately, when you have 100 pieces of rolling stock and you don't replace any of it, at some point it stops working. And now you didn't save money, you now have to replace everything all at once or in a fairly short order. We're at the point now in Northborough where we've been so disciplined and consistent in our planning and our finances that we don't have that hole. And so the police chief is not coming before you or going to town meeting saying, I can't keep this crew. You might call for an emergency and my cruiser may or may not be able to get there. Or the fire chief saying, I don't have an ambulance. I have one ambulance that works. The other one works when it feels like it. If it's snowing and there's a storm, equipment breaks down, but our equipment is in decent enough shape. It's no different than your home personal vehicle. If you're maintaining it, there's a reasonable expectation that it could break down, but there's a reasonable expectation that it's going to work for you. And certainly it isn't all going to break down at the same time if you're maintaining it. So again, we're in a good place, and my concern always is that people look at that and they think, well, we've invested in this equipment and, how about we take a year off? Again, just like your personal life, you have a certain amount that you're going to invest in your house, in your roof, in your furnace, and maintaining your vehicles, and making sure things get taken care of. The best thing and the easiest thing to do is make smaller, consistent investments on an annual basis rather than punt it off and then have to deal with something down the road. Because it doesn't get cheaper, and it doesn't go away. So deal with it in real time with good planning, so that if something bad does happen, say world economy implodes, right? That's happened to us, right? All of a sudden, state aid gets cut mid-year, the bottom falls out. If you had to, you could take a year, you could postpone some of these things, if you had to, right? But you do it knowing the consequences of that, and you wouldn't do it indefinitely. You know, you have time to maneuver. What we always try to do in our financial planning, our operating budget as well as our capital, is we want to have enough capacity so that when the unexpected happens, expect the unexpected. It will happen. But when it comes, you've got some time and some room to maneuver. It's why we don't spend all of our free cash. We use $500,000 in the operating budget. We always keep $500,000 in reserve. So next year, we know we won't have that structural deficit. If things go bad, we've got an entire year to figure out how to plan for that or how to address it, you know? So that's what we try to do. You never want to be with your back up against the wall if you can avoid it. And it's just good planning. It's just good planning. So.
Anyone else? Julianne?
So, thank you for this. This has been excellent, as well as the meeting last Thursday night about the fire station. I thought people had great questions, and they were very engaged. So you talk about the queue of what needs to be, you know, what moves up in line. Mm-hmm. Where do you see town hall?
The town hall is actually in that queue. If you look at the 6-year capital plan for next year and the year after, it's to be determined. So we've got a few things that are in play with the town hall. There's potential investment in this building. We have the old town hall at 4 West Main Street that's going to be reverting back to the town in 4 years. There might be a potential to come back sooner. And then we have White Cliffs that is in the mix here too. So the fire station is on deck. That's a project we're moving through. Town hall is the next project that we need to figure out if we're either investing and staying here, if we might potentially move back to the old town hall or to go someplace else. So that's the next project. And we've been having discussions, the Financial Planning Committee has been having discussions about town hall for the last 3 or 4 years. We've made some modest investments to maintain the structure here, but we need to get to the point where we need to put significant funds either into this building or someplace else. And where we're getting close enough where we have the old town hall reverting back to us, that clearly comes into play, either relocating there or selling that building, using the proceeds to improve this building. That's all to be determined. And we'll need some planning, funding, probably next year to look at that. So.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, John.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Interview Subcommittee, recommendation for appointments to the Housing Authority. Last March 25th, Leslie and I met. We were the interview committee that evening, and we interviewed 2 candidates, Andrew Dowd and Ray Carlson, for 2 appointments. One is a partial 4-year term, and one's a partial 1-year term. And I think Leslie has a couple of motions.
I do. I move the board vote to appoint Andrew Dowd to the Housing Authority for a 1-year term to expire on April 30th, 2020, as recommended by the interview committee.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Okay, Leslie.
I move the board vote to appoint Ray Carlson to the Housing Authority for a 4-year term to expire on April 30th, 2023, as recommended by the interview subcommittee.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Okay, thank you. Okay, reappointments to boards, committees, and commissions. We have a list of the reappointment list that Diane has submitted to us for reappointment, but I think first Jason wanted to address the interviews that were held for zoning board.
Sure, Madam Chair, thank you. Among the various reappointments that were up for consideration for expiring terms, we had publicized those terms are expiring and invited members of the public, if they were interested, to submit applications. The only applications we received were 2 applicants for the Zoning Board of Appeals, Incumbent Richard Rand was up for reappointment and had expressed interest in continuing. We also had applicants Jonathan Ray and Peter Basius, who submitted interest. And so last Tuesday night, April 2nd, Selectman Tim Kalin and I conducted the interviews. Both Don Rand and Leslie Rattan have personal associations with people on the ZBA, and so they recused themselves. Tim and I conducted the interviews with the applicants. And so going through the process, it was basically having the applicants present their qualifications. Both of the new applicants were, through their resumes, at least very accomplished business and finance professionals, certainly very bright people, very interested in giving back to the town, trying to find an opportunity to do that, and regarding the ZBA as one of the boards in town that has quite a substantial influence potentially over the character of the town, how it develops over time. And so Tim and I conducted the interviews with Mr. Rand, Mr. Ray, and Mr. Basius. In conducting those interviews, Mr. Rand has more than 20 years of experience, has chaired the ZBA many times. He's been involved through several significant projects that have come through town, including Northborough Crossing Retail Complex, the Avalon Bay Apartment Complex, some of the early zoning violations that were entertained by SA Farms, and had a very strong track record of service on the committee, reliability, judgment in coming to decisions, which, if they were subject to legal challenge, were upheld in the courts. So it was very excellent track record for us to consider. Mr. Ray and Mr. Basius, as I said, had both very similar backgrounds, described their qualifications in terms of transferable skills such as critical thinking, coping with complexity, negotiation, consensus building, problem resolution. They were certainly, on the surface, very capable individuals. As we inquired further, however, specifically about their past experience with ZBA or what preparation they had done since submitting their interest, for the most part had not attended a ZBA meeting previously, had not appeared before a ZBA as a petitioner or to submit input during a public hearing. Apart from the marijuana prohibition issue, which was front and center last year, I'm sure there isn't anyone in town who doesn't know about that one. There wasn't any particular prior zoning issue that they would cite as having been something that substantially occupied their interest or that they were particularly concerned about. And so I think, in sum, I should say also that we had the benefit of current ZBA Chair Brad Blanchett assisting us in the interview process. So following the interviews, in consultation during the deliberation, our thought process was that we had, of the two new applicants, people of very high potential, who, if they choose to pursue it, with additional work to become better acquainted with the zoning bylaws, understand the role of the ZBA, certainly could become productive members of the board at a later time. As it stands currently, however, Mr. Rand's experience was certainly very superior, and we were certainly in agreement that it was appropriate to reappoint him, and based on his experience, his service to the town, and that his reappointment was in the best interest of the town to perform the work of the ZBA. So, that said, Tim, do you have anything you'd care to add for that?
No, I mean, the only other thing that we discussed was to hopefully that Mr. Ray and Mr. Basius will look into other opportunities to serve the community in other capacities, because they both were
right.
very, very qualified. It's, the experience on the ZBA was the
Right, I think
deciding factor.
one of our observations was that there are certain committees in town where if you have time and interest and energy, you can step in and contribute immediately. And some of those committees have kind of complementary skills among their members. Somebody's better at planning, somebody's better at finance and numbers, somebody's good at communications and publicity, for instance. And the combination of those skills on a committee makes that committee effective in its job. We kind of saw the ZBA as being a little bit different, where each and every member really has to become an expert in zoning law to be able to hear the input from the petitioners, to be able to apply their knowledge of zoning to arrive at an opinion, and then collectively to discuss that and come to a judgment as a committee about what they need to do. So in our view, the ZBA really sets the highest bar in terms of preparation and sophistication. And unlike many other boards, the ZBA has both regular members and some alternate members. And we thought a more appropriate progression would be to have somebody join the board in an alternate capacity, spend a couple of years attending the meetings, having full participation in the meetings. They just aren't the voting member when it comes time to vote on issues. And then after a period of time as an alternate, you're certainly prepared to step into the role as a regular member. So that's kind of the progression that we saw as providing the best preparation and the most capable members to serve on the board. It is a high bar. It does require a lot of effort and self-directed education and the commitment in time to actually go to a lot of these meetings and develop that experience. We'd certainly encourage these two gentlemen, if they have an interest, to examine some of the other vacancies on other committees, which might be an easier path to become involved immediately and begin contributing to the town immediately. So that was our reasoning process. Julianne, you were in attendance for the interviews. Do you have any observations or comments you'd like to offer?
My only observation was also that the chairman of the ZBA, Brad,
Yes.
had a lot of good observations in line with what you observed, and I'd also like to say that the other two candidates were extremely qualified, and I hope that they will find something to help the town using their talents, because they had impressive CVs.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Madam Chair, for that.
Okay, any other discussion about reappointments? Hearing none, do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
I move the board vote to reappoint those individuals who appear on the 2019 reappointment list to the corresponding boards, committees, and commissions.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Leslie?
I'm not sure if I can vote since I.
I just got a note that says because you're a voting member on the reappointment list as a whole, you can vote.
Yeah.
Okay.
There'd be no reason to recuse yourself for the overall vote.
So if I can vote, I guess you can vote.
Okay. Sounds good.
Okay, I heard a motion and a second.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. Reappointment list carries. Okay. Assignment of town meeting warrant articles. And we usually do assign these. You've received a package that says which ones we need to do. That we usually present at town meeting, that the selectman makes a note. I think there were 16 of them, and if possible, I would like to do number 1, number 4, and number 20. Number 1, because I've always done it. It's the appointment of the deputy moderator. He's the second most important person at town meeting. And then the town budget, because usually the chair makes that motion. And I'd like to do the fire station since I chair that committee.
Okay, what are those numbers again, Dawn?
1, 4, and 20.
I'm sorry, 1, 4, and?
20.
20.
So if we can go through, number 2, we need a selectman.
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay, Jason. Okay, prior year's bills.
I'll do it.
Julianne.
Is that one going to be passed over? Or?
Yes, I mean, literally, it goes right up to the night of town meeting, but at this point in time, we do not have any prior year's bills, and if anybody shows up with one, we're going to have a very stern discussion with them. But I'm anticipating that would be passed over.
Okay, but it still has to be presented, so Julianne. And 4 I will do. Number 5.
I'll do it.
Okay, Leslie? Okay, number 9. Tim? Appropriations Committee, number 10.
I'll do it.
Julianne. Number 11, Stabilization Fund.
Sure.
Okay, Jason. CIP, Fire Ambulance Replacement, number 12. Leslie?
I'll do it.
CIP, Police Cruiser Replacements. Tim? Okay, 14, CIP, DPW 1-ton pickup truck. Julianne? Okay, number 15, CIP, DPW 20-ton dump truck.
I'll be happy to.
Jason.
Everybody gets a truck.
Everybody gets a truck.
Get a truck.
Okay, DPW road improvements, number 16. Tim. 17, DPW water and sewer garage design. Julianne. DPW water asset storage tank rehabilitation. Leslie. CIP fire station design and land acquisition.
That's you.
That's me.
Dawn, right?
So we each get 3.
Pretty much, right.
Each get 3 then, Dawn?
That's about right.
Yeah, there's 16, so I took 3 and somebody, well, a couple will have 4, so. All right, so that takes care of that. The motion will be written up for you, so you don't have to do any advanced preparation. You'll just read the motion and sign it and hand it to the moderator. Okay. Vote on town meeting warrant article recommendations. So John has the town budget we usually vote on. So do I hear a motion to approve the town budget and recommend approval of it at town meeting?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the board recommend approval of Article 4, Town Budget.
Do I hear a second?
Second?
All those in favor? Okay. Article 5 also needs approval of our, some type of recommendation.
Shall I just do these?
You can.
Yes,
hold on.
okay. Madam Chair, I move the board vote to recommend approval of Article 5, Water, Sewer, and Solid Waste Enterprise Funds.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Northborough K-8 schools budget.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I move that the board vote to recommend approval of Northborough K-8 schools budget.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. The road improvements and maintenance, number 16. Nope. Nope, we don't need
Would
that
be
one.
Article
20 would be the next one.
So, given the magnitude of the fire station project, you certainly could weigh in and take votes on any of the capital items. That is the primary role of Financial Planning Committee, but that it wouldn't preclude the board. But the fire station is something the board should take a position on. You've been an integral part of that process, so I would recommend you take a motion on it.
Do I hear a motion?
This is Article 20?
Yes.
Article 20.
Yes. I move the board vote to recommend approval of Article 20, fire station design and land acquisition at town meeting.
Second.
All those in favor? Okay. And we had a little, John and I had a discussion about the Article 34. And although we put it on the warrant, I don't feel strongly that we should be taking a stand on it, but does anyone else? It's the being able to drink in the golf course
10 a.m.
at 10 a.m. on Sunday. Article 34, which is being able to drink on Sundays on the golf course early in the morning.
Yeah.
We did vote to put it on the warrant, but it's really, I would feel it's more like Dudley's article. So I don't know how the rest of you feel, but I don't really feel like we need to take a vote on it.
Agree.
Okay. All right, by agreement. Okay, that was the last one, right?
Can I make a pitch for that one?
If you want to.
Yeah, if I may, the board has traditionally taken a position on the town budget, the enterprise funds, and the K-8 schools. And you have, on some years, made a recommendation regarding the high school, Algonquin Regional High School budget, depending on what's happening in that particular year. Just given the fact that the high school budget has been the most difficult budget for us to bring in, given the fact that we have shifting enrollments and our assessment is over 8%. It's been a very significant impact on the overall financial plan of the town. I do just want to acknowledge and appreciate the school superintendent and the school committee for their willingness to, as always, work collaboratively with the general government side of the budget to bring in an overall financing plan for us as a town that everybody can support. The Appropriations Committee has unanimously recommended approval of the high school budget. Their budget itself is a 3% increase. Again, I'm just very grateful to the superintendent, and if the board would like to, I think it would show a positive, vote that you support their budget and the collaborative manner in which they brought it forward. That could have been a real difficult thing for the community to struggle through, but getting the budget down and fitting it into our original forecast, I think was something that's worth recognizing. So if the board would like, I think it'd be great if you take a position. If you don't, that's okay too.
Board's pleasure. Julianne?
So you're talking about Article 7?
Article 7, would the board want to recommend approval of that to town meeting?
Will that cause any problem if we don't endorse Article 6 and 8?
Well, you're
We did
endorsing
say-
Article 6 already. That's the K-8 budget. So you just voted to recommend approval. So we're just talking about Article 7 at this point.
So, but if we do Article 7, should we also do 8?
Again, you can, the board can take a position on any of these articles as they'd like. I don't think the Assabet assessment is really anything of significance, whereas the high school assessment is the single largest tax impact item that's on the warrant for us. So, and the fact that it took us the better part of 4 or 5 months to, work that out collaboratively with the schools, I just think it would be it'd be a nice show of positive endorsement that we appreciate the way the superintendent and the school committee work well with us. And rather than being adversarial, we're bringing forward a budget that everybody is in support of, at least the appropriations committee is. So, again, the board can do what it's like. If you don't feel comfortable endorsing the school budget, that's okay. I just want to throw it out, I want to throw it out there this year, given the fact that it was the single biggest budgetary issue we dealt with, and we dealt with it in a positive way.
Jason?
I would agree with your assessment, John, that we're bringing forward a budget this year that works as well as it does in large part because of the collaboration of the superintendent and the school committee, school administration. So I would be happy to make a motion to provide a recommendation, yeah. Shall I make a motion? Do you have a motion?
Not that one.
Okay. Madam Chair, I move the board vote to recommend the Northborough Southborough Regional School District budget at town meeting.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. Are we already in favor? Okay.
Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Okay, set meeting schedule for May through August. Do you have it? I did have it. Let me- So we have the schedule in front of us. Actually, from May through August, it will limit to, meeting dates will be once a month, May 20th, June 17th, July 15th, and August 19th. First, does anyone have any conflicts? Okay. And is everybody in agreement that that would work?
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a motion?
Madam Chair, I move the board vote to set the meeting schedule for May through August as follows: May 20th, June 17th, July 15th, August 19th.
Second?
Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Okay. Any other business to come before the board?
Nothing else this evening?
Okay. Do I hear a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn.
I didn't think anybody wanted to there for a moment.
Second.
Having too much fun.
It's been made and seconded. All those in favor?